Recording now.
We are now. Thank you, Will. It just occurred to me, we wanted to record today's session. So thinking about outcomes from today, consultative selling best practice, I'm going to talk you through a model called the Inspire sales process, and also going to talk you through the customer journey. So we're going to look at, one, the sales process and how we use it most effectively to drive kind of optimal, consistent sales results. And we're going to look at how it fits with the customer journey so that we can see where the relevance is of the approach we take to the journey we know the customer is going to go on as they choose to work with us and our organizations. And then really, as we go through the entire webinar, I'd like you to be thinking about how you can use what we cover today to maximize sales growth for you, for your organization, for your teams, and for your customers. And then, as I say, we'll have a chance for questions and answers and actions at the end. And we are going to have an interactive session today. So we'll be running a poll shortly just to get an opportunity to understand a bit more about our attendees today and to understand some of the challenges you face. But first of all, let me do a quick introduction. So my name is Justin Lee, and my background is in sales and sales leadership and business leadership. So whilst I am now a kind of sales trainer and executive coach, I come at my programs and work with clients from a position of experience rather than from training and education. So my background is having been in sales, leadership, and business management for close on 30 years. And my background kind of started in the dental industry. I then moved into sales. I then moved into sales leadership. And I worked for a very large organization, 3M, one of the kind of top 50 organizations in the world. And during my 18-year career at 3M, worked across multiple different businesses, 6 different businesses, and ended up leading their largest division in the UK. So a lot of experience, a lot of work on personal and professional development, and doing that, working through that with teams that work for me as well. So run lots of large businesses. And then in 2017, I decided that I wanted to leave the corporate world and set my own business up. And so I founded Focus for Growth in early 2018, retrained as an executive coach, and then started working with private clients myself to help them to get access to some of this kind of world-class best practice that I'd learned throughout my career, been fortunate enough to learn throughout my career, and help them through kind of mentoring and coaching. And then beyond that, recognize the opportunity to kind of share some of that in a more structured way. So wrote a book, and that book became an Amazon bestseller, which I'm very pleased about. The Inspire, Influence, Sell book became an Amazon bestseller. And really that becomes the framework for all of the content we'll talk about today when it comes to sales and professional development. And I've been very fortunate that throughout my corporate career, I won a number of awards, and most recently was really privileged to have won the SME Awards for Cambridgeshire. I came runner-up for the Business Chameleon Award, particularly looking at how we'd responded, our business had responded during COVID. And then secondly, in March, I attended the Huntingdonshire SME Awards. I've been nominated for Business Person of the Year and was shocked and in awe to have won the prize. So I was absolutely delighted, and that means I'm a finalist in the National Awards coming up in December later this year. So some great recognition for the work that my team and I do with our amazing clients. And what we try and do, we find that a lot of organizations, I've found this on a personal level, and I've found it through the client work that I do, over time in our businesses, especially in sales and leadership roles, as we get kind of not necessarily complacent, but we start to, we start to lose focus, lose energy, and things start to drift. And people in our organization can start to feel as if, results are sporadic, as if perhaps there's some inconsistencies going on. Perhaps they don't feel as positive as they once did. And what we try and do through our work with clients is kind of get them realigned, start to get them thinking about, what does high performance look like? What are the results we're really committed to? How do we improve our own engagement, especially if we're in leadership positions? Because if we're not fully engaged, if we're not highly engaged as leaders in the business, it's almost impossible to get that level of engagement from our teams. So we have to work on ourselves first. And when we get that engagement going, we get the right mindset, we start to map out the key stages of the work we're going to do, particularly in sales, and you'll learn that today. Then we start to get greater consistency, and people start to perform at a higher level, they enjoy their work more, and actually growth becomes the consequence of the work that we've done, and not just part of the process, but almost an inevitable consequence of the work we do. And that's really rewarding for us as business leaders and as high performers or potential high performers. So that's the kind of work that we do. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to know a bit about you. So we've got a really diverse group on the call today. So I'm going to run my first poll with you this afternoon. And so the first poll is about us understanding who you are. So I'm going to ask you just to click on the description that kind of best fits you and your role. Are you a business owner? Are you a business leader or business manager? Are you a sales leader or sales manager? Are you a sales or business development professional? Are you a marketer? Because we have a lot of marketers that join our sessions. Or is it something else? If there's an other, just click the other and then just drop your answer into the chat. So at the moment we have 23 of you on the call today. We've got 15 of you have answered. So if you haven't had the chance yet, please feel free to click one of the buttons. Which best describes you: business owner, business leader, sales leader or manager, sales or business development professional, or marketer. Thank you. Great. We are almost all there. So I'm going to end the poll and share your results. So you should be able to see this. We have 45% of people on our call today are business owners. So welcome to the business owners. 23% of business leaders, business managers. So welcome to you as well. 5% are sales leaders, sales managers. And I appreciate there may be a bit of overlap there between business and sales leader. 14% are sales or business development professionals, and same percentage, 14%, are marketers. So great. Thank you all for joining us today. And I hope you get a lot from today's session. Thank you. That's great. So now let's go to challenges. So I work with a lot of clients, and when we first engage and first start talking about why they've approached me and what they're looking to achieve, we tend to find there are a number of themes that seem to get in the way of sales organizations. And here's a list. I'm going to run a second poll for you now and just sense check how you're finding things in your own business. So let me stop sharing that poll. Let's go to the second poll question. So I'd love to hear, what is you or your team's biggest challenge at the moment with selling or the sales process? Now, number one on this list is getting the customer to meet your team. Number two is asking the right questions when you do get engagement. The third is sales confidence and motivation. Can be a problem over time, actually, that one, in my experience. Fourth is managing remote selling. Fifth is maintaining client momentum. But there may be something else. If there's something else that's your main challenge, please hit other and let's pop and just write it in the chat, and I'll call it out so that we can see it. So I think we've got almost everybody. Where are we? So 16 have answered. That's it. Thank you. Just keep clicking. And if it's other, just take a moment to put your choice in the chat, please. Great, thank you. I think we're almost there. A couple more, and then we'll be ready. Okay, let me share the results with you. Okay, so your results, here's what we've got. Number one at 29% is getting the customer to meet you or meet your team. Joint second is maintaining client momentum and managing remote selling at 24% each. Next then is the other, which we'll come to in a second, and that's drawn with sales confidence and sales motivation. And then finally, let me stop sharing that. Let me go to the chat and let's see what was in the chat. So first two from Gina. Thank you, Gina. So 1 and 2 for Gina. Michael, being seen as an advancement on current processes. So actually creating some value, being able to demonstrate that you are going to be able to show some advancement to current processes that your customer is using. I'll assume that's right, Michael, unless you correct me in the chat. Please feel free to do so. Sarah, the remote selling, it's difficult to get hold of clients. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. We are going to help you with all of those this afternoon. So let me share what I find with my own client work. So this is what my clients find. This is the order in which my clients have the challenges that we just discussed. And this is the normal percentage split. I'm going to update this after today's webinar with your results. But before today, number one is getting the customer to meet me, which links to Sarah's comment in the chat just now. 22% of people saying getting the customer to meet is the challenge. We're going to share some insights that are going to help you make a step change in that. Second is sales confidence and motivation. So 20%, usually sales confidence and motivation. It's really interesting. Something I've experienced in my career at two stages. One at the start of my career, where I didn't really have the support that I needed. And so my confidence was low. And even though I was motivated, actually over time, engagement started to slip because I needed more support than I was getting. But then also latterly in my sales career, before I went into sales leadership, out of, I guess it was probably boredom and a bit of frustration that I wasn't being challenged enough, my motivation started to slip. So it's really interesting that it can happen at both ends of the spectrum for our sales professionals. So sometimes we need to find either a way to support those newer people to role or to challenge those people that are more established in the role so they keep getting that edge and that motivation. And then third is maintaining client momentum. So actually it's joint second for most clients. So sales confidence and then maintaining client momentum. So they're the three areas we're really going to focus in on today. So before we jump to that, you've all mentioned some challenges, your own challenges, and you've gone in the poll. What I'd love to do is just invite you now to jump into a breakout room so that so that you get a chance to meet some of your peers on today's call, but also so that you've got the chance just to share some of either the challenges that you face or what you're looking to get from today's workshop, so that you're clear on the start. You can share that with others, and it will just allow you to also just get a bit more insight about other people's challenges. Very often we learn as much from the challenges other people face as we do from our own. So I'm going to create a few breakout rooms. We'll have roughly 3 or 4 people in each room. So we're not going to make this a long breakout session. 5 minutes max, please. Quick round of introductions. And then if you just share your kind of either one challenge and the impact it has or what you're looking to get out of the session. Okay, so 5 minutes. I'll open up the rooms. All you need to do when the rooms open up, just click the button to accept. And I'll give you a countdown and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. We'll take some feedback and then we'll carry on with our session. Okay, so opening the rooms now. Just click on the button and you'll be transported magically to your breakout room. See you back in 5 minutes. Will?
Yes.
I was going to say, do you want to pause the recording at this point?
Yep.
You're rejoining us. If you would, yeah, thank you, Will. If you wouldn't mind, while you're rejoining us, if you could just put in the chat what you came up with. What did you share as being your key kind of priority and the impact that might have, area of focus for today? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat, please.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. If I could just invite you to share in the chat what you discussed. What were your key kind of insights from that conversation with each other? I hope you enjoyed meeting somebody new as well. I'll ask you all just to go back onto mute if you don't mind, because it's very easy to forget that we do that. But if you could just drop into the chat, what did you discuss? What was the key theme? There will probably have been a couple of themes in your group discussions. I'd love to hear what came up. I just want to make sure as we go through today's content I'm going to look to address as much of your priorities and focus areas today as I can. That's the plan. Okay, I can see some fast fingers in the background. Okay, Sarah, getting hold of the contacts. Thanks, Sarah. Justin spoke with Tina. Great, agreed. Apathy or fear of change was key for our companies. Okay, thank you, Justin. Thank you, and thank you, Tina. Okay, fear of change. We'll talk a bit about that as well. Okay, great. Jenny, B2B focus and suitable sales channels. Okay, thank you, Jenny. Yeah, we'll look at that. Matthew, learning, answering challenges, and focusing on development. Okay, thank you, Matthew. I think again we'll definitely have a look at that today. Ivan, not getting ghosted. Yeah, I hate it when that happens, Ivan, don't you? Getting ghosted. I hate being ghosted. I'm sure everyone knows the term, right? Where you've started a conversation with a customer, everything seems great, and then they just stop replying. And it's like, where did they go? They turned into a ghost, right? Ghosted. Marie, thank you, Marie. Trying to get hold of decision makers with so many people working from home. Yes, absolutely, Marie. That can be a challenge as well, because not every people aren't in the office anymore. So we've got to find an alternative way. Okay, we'll definitely talk about that. If I don't talk about that, Marie, pick me up at the end and I'll share a couple of tips around that one as well. Nicola, talking to the right people, people knowing we exist, when and if to stop following up. Okay, Nicola, thank you. Great. Again, I've got a couple of tips around that, Nicola. I will try and remember to cover them. If I don't, please, if any of these still are outstanding, the Q&A at the end, please bring my attention back to them and I'll make sure that we cover them. Leander, thank you, Leander. 2 of us out of 3 shared the same issue. Great, in your group. Momentum, and your term being breaking through versus the other participant being opening the sale, breaking in. I like that terminology, Leander. So breaking in or into the customer and then breaking through, keeping momentum through the customer. Thanks, Leander. We'll definitely cover that today as well. Sarah, again, at what point do we leave a prospect and move on? Great question, Sarah. We'll try and get some clarity on that before the end of the session today. Anthony Quinn, client momentum from initial enthusiasm to proposal, and then hear nothing back from the client, especially when remote. Great, Anthony, I've got an answer for you today. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Excellent. Some really good conversations there, and some great topics, really aligned with what we're going to cover today. So thank you, everybody, for sharing those. Hope you enjoyed the opportunity to meet your group as well. We will use the breakout rooms again at the end of today's session just to share what you've learned, how it's going to help, and what you're committed to do next. So that will give you an opportunity just to circle back and make sure that we've covered everything. Then we'll do our Q&A at the end. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about the challenges. So we're going to focus in on these 3 key challenges because these are the ones that come up time and time again, and they are going to, I think to a certain degree, I think most of you will relate to them. So challenge number 1, getting the customer to meet me. I think this links to that point, Leander, that you made, that your partner made, breaking in. How do we break in? So the challenge that we face is that if we don't lead with value-led messaging, I'll talk about how to do this in the next session. We're just going to focus on the challenges today. Then clients don't engage. If we don't take the right approach, clients won't engage. And what happens is we then end up pitching. So we think that pitching our business or pitching our product or pitching ourselves is what we should be doing. And actually customers don't care, right? It's sad news, I'm sorry to tell you. They don't care about how good we are. They're not interested. They are less than interested. They become disengaged. And then we have this issue where they don't respond. Okay, we've got a fix for it, but we have to learn how to change. And what happens for our teams, and I've experienced this early in my career, is we get unsure of what the right approach is. So we think, I know, let's just do more. It must be a numbers game. So we just keep doing more and more of the same activity that just doesn't work. Ineffective pitching does not work. So just turning up the pressure or turning up the volume or turning up the numbers doesn't actually work. And you know, when you think about it, think about from the customer's perspective, and we're going to talk about a method of doing this in the second part of today's workshop. If somebody says, if either somebody doesn't respond or they say they're too busy, then it's a result of the perceived value they have of seeing you. Okay, that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's important for us to swallow, because once we recognize that the problem is they don't see sufficient value in spending time with us, then we can change our approach and fix the problem. But while we don't think that's the problem, while we think the problem is the customer's ignoring us, not that we're not creating enough value, we can't fix it. We have to fix us and our approach. We're going to talk about how to do this shortly. So that's number one. Number two, challenge number two. So challenge number two links to challenge number one. When we find customers not engaging, that can impact our sales confidence. It can impact our self-belief, and we start to erode our own self-esteem. And this happens very often with sales teams. I have been through this on a personally, and I've helped clients who have had the same situation. And the reason this happens is because rejection hurts. It hurts us personally and psychologically. We all have a need to be recognized and accepted in the world. And when we're in sales or business development roles, if you just think about your own business. If we, normally we think about a sales funnel, we think about opportunities in and customer conversations. A very good conversion rate in sales is around 35%. That's a good conversion rate. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that by the very fact of the numbers, that 65% of the time we're rejected and we get a no. So you think about that from a sales perspective, rejection starts to erode confidence and motivation. And because what then happens is,
could you give me a call back on 02?
Oh, there we go. Just muted Maxine. So unless we start to change our perspective on this, we have to think about how our mindset and our psychology works. Start thinking about continually evolving the approach we take. Think about how we persevere for longer, and even to the point where we reinterpret what a no means. If we start to reinterpret it and change the way we think about the sales situation and the customer engagement or disengagement, then it starts to change the way that we behave. But if we don't do that, it's just a process of erosion. And what happens with a lot of customers, this happened with me, when you become uncertain and perhaps a little insecure, we start to hesitate. We start to pull back from new sales activities, start to fill our time with what we tell ourselves are important non-sales activities. Well, I had to fill in the CRM, I had to send the email, I had to write the report, I had to do X, Y, and Z. And we end up doing things that are not sales activities. And when we're in sales and business development roles, our core role is sales and business development. We have to remember that. And so working the psychology is really important. We'll talk about some principles, as I say, in the second half of our session. And the challenge that we face, and you all have been there and I've been there, is that just pushing harder, just doing more doesn't work. You might get the odd strike here and there, but actually what we need to do is go back to fundamentals and understand, how do we fix this? How do we make sure that our approach evolves and becomes something of value to the customer? Challenge number three. So challenge number three is linked to challenge number one and to challenge number two. So challenge number three is we have this inability to maintain client momentum. We get as Justin said, as Leander said, we get the break in, then sometimes we can't get the break through. So what happens is, we get clients engaged, or our teams are able to get clients engaged, but during the process, they're not creating quite enough value for the customer. And so then closing the business or getting commitment early on in the sales cycle doesn't happen. And the customer says something like, I am interested, but I need some time to think about it. And our team say, okay, no problem. I'll let you think about it and then I'll follow up. And that is like the recipe for being ghosted. That is like that, plus the customer who's slightly disengaged is the recipe for ghosting. So what we find sales teams do, what I find sales teams do, what I did myself, I have to admit, early in my career, I talked too much. I pitched generic features of the product. I didn't really understand the customer in the way I should have understood the customer. And because I didn't understand the customer, I wasn't relevant. And so in a way, as I look back, I kind of think, well, no wonder they didn't engage. No wonder I struggled so much. I was really coming at it from completely the wrong approach. And we'll talk about the right approach shortly, but it's important for us to understand the problem before we can fix it. And then the final part of this is about connecting dots. As sales and business development professionals, our job is to connect the dots for the customer between the problems they face and the opportunity for us to present a solution that works. And if we can't join up the dots, then the customer doesn't do it for themselves. And so we find ourselves in a conversation that feels okay in the moment, is friendly enough, but then when we finish it, the customer's thinking, well, I didn't really understand how that's going to help me. They won't say this to you. They don't say it to you because they feel a sense of obligation to be polite. So you go away thinking, great, we've got a deal, we're on. And the customer's thinking, I'm not sure that's right. And very often the reason they ghost is because they're not sure how to come back to you. Do I go back and say, well, I spent all that time with you, Justin, but I didn't really see how you could help me? Then they're kind of a little bit embarrassed about saying that. They don't want to progress because there wasn't enough value, but they also don't want to say, you know, I've wasted your time. So the answer is they ghost you. So that's why we get ghosted, because we end up in this middle ground where the customer's not sure what to do. And if we follow the process, if we follow the right sales process, we overcome this, but we have to overcome this. So the thing is, a note about CRM systems, about sales activities, sales opportunities. We can put in place metrics that can help us with this, you know, activity levels and opportunities, but they tend to be quantitative metrics. And very often those types of metrics, you know, they call them vanity metrics. They can serve as good indicators, but they can also be gamed. So I could make 100 phone calls in a day, and if the quality isn't right, I might as well not have made a single call. I'd rather somebody did less activity, but more focused, high quality, customer centric activity. So we have to kind of almost retrain ourselves in sales and business management roles to know that we're looking for quality over quantity every time. And so the combination of these three key challenges, and obviously there are more than these three key challenges, as we learned from your poll results earlier in the workshop. But the consequence is that we see these, you know, people kind of do a bit more, they keep doing a bit more, but through that increase in activity, we see a decrease in effectiveness. And the other thing that happens that's very difficult to measure, but it happens, is that the sales cycle lengthens. So we end up, when we can't maintain breakthrough, we can't get the customer re-engaged, the cycle lengthens. So instead of it taking 6 months to close a sale, it might take 9 or 12. It may never close. But we start to see this issue, growth slows, and actually, again, very difficult to measure, but cost of sales increases. So we end up with a team that start to lose motivation and morale, who don't necessarily do this intentionally, but they start to disengage, they start to resist and become defensive. If you have a sales team that are defensive, it may be because they're not quite sure of the right approach. So as sales leaders and business leaders, what do? I've been there. We apply more pressure to improve the situation. It worsens. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. And we think, why hasn't that worked? Now as leaders, we start to question ourselves. And so we focus on results and pipeline growth and all the lagging metrics, all the stuff that has already happened. And we can't fix what's already happened. We can only fix what is about to happen. So performance and results are erratic. Teams become at times overwhelmed. It's interesting, when I first started working with sales teams and we were talking about consequences and some of the challenges, the word that comes up even today keeps coming up: overwhelm, overwhelm, overwhelm. And it largely, from the work I do with clients, we've kind of pinpointed it down to the fact that they're not as effective as they should be. And so they are running to stand still. And more activity comes on. And so this feeling of overwhelm happens almost by default. And so ultimately, staff churn can increase, customer satisfaction reduces. There is a direct correlation between sales effectiveness, sales capability, and customer or client satisfaction. We see client satisfaction reducing over time. None of this is intentional, by the way. This all happens as a result of just not having the right structure in place. And ultimately, we can lose some sales opportunities. And as I say, I don't say this from theory. I say this from experience, having done it, lived it, breathed it, and had these issues myself personally. And so we get to a stage where we know the problems, we're kind of compounding them, but what do we do about it? Here's a principle. So let's start talking about what we do about it. Here's number one principle. We should remember, and this is easy to forget, okay? So I had two key moments in my career where there were real light bulb moments. So the first was when I learned how to consultatively sell. I spent the first 2 years of my sales career and I wasn't taught how to sell. It wasn't until I changed companies. I went to work for a very large organization. And one of the first things they did was put me through a sales training program. And I learned that the way to sell and influence people is to pull it from them, not push it on them. And it was such an important distinction. Up until that point, I had been pitching. I'd had a degree of success, nowhere near where it should have been. And this moment in my mind where I kind of had this reflective light bulb moment, I'm pushing people, I should be pulling. So I'm telling them things, I should be asking them things. Instead of telling, I should be asking. And that happened in my sales career. It made a tremendous difference. And we'll talk through some real tangible principles and structure shortly. It then happened to me a second time when I moved from sales into leadership. And having got to the point where I've become quite competent at sales, quite high performer, one of the highest, I think the highest performer in the organization I was working in. And then I moved into sales management, because that's what happens. They like to take the best salesperson, make them a sales manager. doesn't always work out. And for me, the first time it didn't work out either, because I started in a sales leadership role and thought, I know what I'm doing. All I need to do is get my team doing what I'm doing, and we will absolutely fly. And guess what? People don't like being told what to do. And I had to learn the whole principle a second time, but it was much more painful the second time. So we find the same in leadership as we do in selling and influencing. Commitment from people, whether it's a customer, whether it's a team member, it cannot be pushed. It has to be pulled. It has to be drawn. You have to coach. You have to listen. You have to ask really good questions. You have to pause, create some space, let the other person do the processing, and then you can guide them, because they'll follow when you take an approach that is pulling from them, not pushing them. And that is such an important distinction. I can't tell you. If you take one thing from today, remember that commitment is pulled. It isn't pushed. It's kind of become the foundation for the work that I do and the transformation that we're able to make in a lot of sales organizations and in leadership teams. So commitment is pulled and not pushed. And one of the reasons this is such an issue in B2B sales environments is because there's some evidence by Caliper Corporation, and they did a huge research study that showed how many kind of sales professionals were working in the West, something like, they estimate around 21.5 million sales professionals worldwide. I think the number's probably higher, but that was their data. And of those 21 million, they said 55% had never been formally trained to sell. So trained in the market, trained in the customer, trained in the business, trained in the product, but then not trained how to join all that up and sell. And that's the missing ingredient very often for a lot of organizations. And as I say, it was for me for many years. So let's talk about the customer journey. We're going to take a break in about 5 minutes, but let's do the customer journey, and then we'll take a short break. So I think this is going to help you all to visualize what we're going to go through for the rest of the session. It'll also help you to visualize what it is we're trying to do with the customer. So first things first, let's talk about the sales funnel. You will all have seen, I'm sure, in the past, a traditional sales funnel that looks like this. If you can all see me on screen, that looks like this. Now, the challenge with the traditional sales funnel is it makes one inherent assumption and that is that gravity and your customer will naturally be drawn down through the funnel, when actually in sales interactions, nothing could be further from the truth. Customers will not be drawn through our funnel. In fact, gravity in the sales process acts against us. We're not continually drawing customers through the funnel, through the process, then they will slip back down. It's why we find that maintaining client momentum is one of the top 3 challenges, because they keep dropping back through the funnel. We have to find a way to maintain a sense of urgency and control. So let's talk about the customer journey and where our sales process aligns with it. So the customer starts their interaction with us, and we as customers, think about yourself as a customer in a sales process too. We start a journey with a potential supplier. They start their journey with us, unaware of the true value we are able to deliver to the customer. Okay, we're unaware at this stage, blissfully unaware. And what we have to do as business development professionals is make sure that we have done our preparation. We've researched the customer. We understand our own portfolio. We know the market. We have a planned approach. We have key insights we can share. And we know that from the work we do, we are well prepared to go into that customer conversation. We will cover this in the second half of today's webinar. So we've prepared ourselves, and through that preparation, we're able to then craft more compelling messages that get the customer's attention. Okay, so we want the customer to go from unaware to attentive in the first instance. So once the customer's attentive, our job then is to lead with insight. Okay, so we want to be delivering insights to the customer that start to change the way they think about their business or their situation or the challenge or the market or their own organization. But we do that through an insight-led approach. We don't do it through a pitch. We don't do it through talking about our own products or our organization. We do it through talking about market insights. And when we do that, when we got this information, the customer's worldview starts to get disrupted. We start to change the way they look at things. And from that position of attention, they can then move to interest. So you tell me something I didn't know, and now I'm interested, okay? And from that position of interest, this is the biggest mistake sales organizations make. They go from that to the customer's interested, I'm now going to tell them everything that we do. And actually the next stage is to say, okay, now that I've got your interest, let's talk about you and your business. What do you need? What are the challenges you face? What are the outcomes you're working towards? What's in your long-term plan? And we understand what the customer needs. And through that understanding of what the customer needs, the customer sells themselves. I'm going to say that again because it's so important, it deserves repeating. From that position of asking questions and understanding what the customer needs, the customer sells themselves to the next stage. The next stage is when they start to create a sense of self-desire. So we've asked them lots of questions. They were interested in the first place, and now all of a sudden they start to just come up with thoughts and answers that they didn't have before. So they just become more enlightened and more aware, and they create this sense of self-desire. Once that desire is in place, once the customer says, okay, now I really do need to fix this, that's when we talk about a solution, and not before. And this is the biggest disconnect, because you can see straight away, most people start our sales process with the solution step right at the start. There are 3 steps before the solution step. And if we follow this process, it works. The customer sells themselves. So we talk about a solution, and at that point, the customer then says, now that sounds like it would help, or it sounds like what I need. I'm now prepared to take action. So when the customer's prepared to take action, we make a proposal, but not before. And many of you will be, you'll be on LinkedIn, you'll be on your social media channels. How many times do you get like a message in your inbox from someone and they're already making a proposal? Every time I get one, I send sometimes, I ignore most of them, but every now and then I'll send a message back that says you're 5 steps ahead of yourself, because there are 5 stages to go through before anybody is ready for us to make a proposal. So we make a proposal when the customer is ready to take action. And at that point, then potentially that person becomes a customer, but they only become a customer if we create enough immediacy and urgency in the final stage. And this is where we maintain momentum. If we don't get the customer really clear on why it's important, on what we're committed to do, what they are committed to do, and we schedule that together so that the next stage of the process is always in the diary for them and for us, then we lose momentum. But having gone through each stage of this process, we will then get the customer committed and prepared to move to the next stage. But they won't do it unless we've gone through this process. And that's the key. And then finally, really what we're looking for are customers that go beyond transactions. We don't want people saying, yeah, we'll try to work with you, Justin, but I've done a price comparison, or I'm considering other options. We really want customers that become loyal clients. They want to work with us over time. They see the value. They want to partner with us. And the way I encourage customers to do that, our program participants to do that, is to go through this process of reflection after every customer meeting and start to think about how we continually improve our approach, how we start to create more value for customers and continually evolve the offering that we have. And so you'll see that that's the journey of the customer, but it's also how our sales process aligns with it, beyond just the transaction of gaining a customer, but really thinking about lifelong loyal customers that choose us and want to partner with us for life. And you will be familiar with the kind of social media terms, customers must know, like, and trust you in order to be, convinced to purchase and buy from you. Absolutely true, but it's an oversimplification of the way it actually works. So that's our customer journey. If you want to take a shot of that, please do. We will allow you to have the slides afterwards as a PDF deck as well, if anybody would like them. We'll coordinate that through the GrowthWorks team. Okay, I'm going to pause there. We're at 5 to 3. I've been going for 55 minutes. It's flying, this session. I'm going to pause there and ask and just say, let's take 5-minute quick kind of recharge, leg stretch, comfort break, and then we'll be back at 3 and start going to our second hour at 3 p.m. Okay. If we can pause the recording, please, Will, and then we'll take, please. Look at that. Perfect. Thank you, Will. Excellent. Okay. Let's continue our session. So we've talked about the customer journey. Let's talk about some interesting statistics. So some of you may have seen this before, but they can be really useful for us to consider. They might answer the questions. We had a couple of questions about when should you give up prospecting or following up with a customer. So here's the counterbalance. The counterbalance is that we follow the sales process. We take a value-led approach to the customer conversation, and we are really making sure that throughout each of the stages of the sales conversation, we're following the process so that the customer is highly engaged. And then at the end of that meeting, at the end of that session, then we know that what we're doing is following up in a way that's meaningful. And that's the key. So even with that, here are the stats, okay? Sales statistics. 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. 12% of salespeople make 3 contacts. Only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. Okay, that's interesting. So here's the really interesting statistics. 2% of sales are made on first contact, 3% on second, 5% on third, 10% on fourth, and 80% are made on 5th to 12th contact. So I hope that answers the question. I think it was Sarah, maybe it was Sarah. Let me go back through the chat. Yeah, Sarah, at what point do we leave the prospect and move on? There you go, Sarah. 5th to 12th contact is where 80% of sales are made. And it's interesting. Throughout my career in sales and sales leadership, I literally can't tell you the number of times I've had customers say to me, thanks for persevering. Sorry, I've been busy. It's a good job you did because now we're ready. And if I hadn't persevered, I would not have been on their agenda. And the key is to be able to persevere in a way that is meaningful for the customer. So rather than I'd like to follow up with you to sell you the stuff we talked about, to say, I know how important it was for you to resolve these challenges. So I'm sending a follow-up because I know that we agreed that I would try and maintain contact, help you resolve this issue. And if we use the sales process in the right way, the messaging becomes more relevant. And when we follow up with customers, actually it's not about whether or not we're nagging them. It's about us helping them to be accountable to make the changes we and they agreed would make an impact for their business. So start to reimagine how we see following up with customers and the frequency. And, you know, as we think about the new world we're in, a number of you said remote selling was a key challenge you face. We won't cover that exactly today. I will say that our process today is just as applicable in person as it is remotely, as it is through email, through any other transaction, telephone calls. So we have to think about these principles. But the world, there's no doubt the world has changed. The situation for selling is more difficult. There's no doubt about it. What it means is those people that have never taken a proven approach are finding it even more difficult than they did pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, the people that are thriving are those people that are taking a solid, proven sales approach. And we use in our business, this sales toolkit that helps us to navigate each stage of the process through a series of assets and documents that really help you to sharpen your sales approach, sharpen your messaging, identify key questions, work out how do you position your portfolio best, understand how you make negotiations more easy and follow up for customers more easy. So there's lots of ways you can do this. We've got a toolkit that has documents that cover every stage of the process. So let's talk about how we resolve these three issues. Number one was getting the customer to meet us. Okay, so the reason the customer doesn't meet us because they've got so much going on. And our job in this situation, you know, people were busy before the pandemic. People are busier than ever post-pandemic because there's a lot of people at desks, a lot of people using electronic means and messaging to get through to customers. And so our job becomes more difficult, and we have to find a way to cut through all of the noise that the customer has going on in their business. So let's talk about three principles that, as I talk through them, hopefully you'll start to see a real kind of a couple of light bulb moments, but really challenge yourself. If you're not using these principles, this is why you're getting, you know, low engagement from customers. So principle number one, we hear this term customer first. Early in our interactions with the customer, our messages, our language, everything we communicate has to be customer only, not customer first. So we shouldn't be talking about our portfolio. We shouldn't be talking about our company. We shouldn't be talking about our reputation. We should be talking about only things that resonate and are relevant to the customer. Because the point early in the cycle, the point is about trying to get engagement from the customer. The customer is only interested in themselves. So we have to put messages in that are only relevant to the customer. The second principle is that customers don't buy products or services or solutions. They buy outcomes. They buy what that product is going to do for them. So nobody wants sales training. It's the most boring thing in the world, right? What they want is the growth in their business, the confidence in their teams. They want to know they're going to be consistent. They want to know that they're going to be able to trust the pipeline. They want to know that they're going to be able to deliver higher levels of customer service and satisfaction and transform their organization. They don't want sales training. And so whatever it is you're selling, you've got to go beyond the product or service and think about the outcome you deliver. And so we think customer only, and we think outcome for the customer. The third principle is this principle we call the power of peers. And what it means is that rather than talk about us and what we can do, we talk about other customers who are already getting value from us. And it gives us external validation and authority. The language has to change. And in any situation, rather than saying, oh, well, we do this, or we have X, Y, and Z, we say, other customers tell us that this part of what we deliver is really valuable for them. And that changes the dynamic. It's less about us trying to push anything onto a customer, and more about us sharing experiences of other customers. And when we start to change the language in this way, not just in early messaging, but throughout our sales process, three things happen in the customer. The first is that they start to get more curious. So they're much more likely to get engaged. The second is that they get reassured in the process. If you're generating results for other customers, there's a greater likelihood that you can actually generate those results for me. And the third thing that happens is they get this, to a certain degree, they can get a fear of missing out. FOMO stands for fear of missing out. So they start to get concerned they might get left behind. And all of a sudden, then the customer starts to chase you, not the other way around. So we kind of reverse the situation with the customer. And so to overcome this first issue of getting the customer to meet us, getting customers to engage, we think about these three principles: think and act, customer only, outcome focused, not product focused, outcome focused, and peer reference, this power of peers, testimonials, other customers' feedback. Maybe it might be customer case studies, white papers, those things that we know are so important for us. And really thinking from a customer's perspective, especially in today's environment, why should the customer trade time for time with us? Because they can only do one thing at a time. So if they're spending time with us, it's time they can't be doing something else. And so asking ourselves this question is a question I encourage people to ask. I ask it myself very often. What will make this customer think this is so important, I must see Justin? And when we think about it like that, the language that we use changes, because we have to think about value for the customer. It can't be about us and what we're trying to achieve. It has to be what we deliver and demonstrate for the customer. So that gives us a real, kind of solid and tangible way to start to change the way we message customers, and the customers will engage much more frequently and at a much higher level if you follow those three principles. Okay. Second principle is around, or second challenge, I should say, is around sales confidence and sales motivation. So let's talk about the foundations of high performance, not just sales success, but high performance. So if we think about what it takes to perform in any field, any sport, any business, we think about three layers. The first layer is about psychology. It's about us managing ourselves. It's about feeling self-confident, building self-esteem, having a vision of ourselves as someone who deserves to win, deserves to be credible, deserves to be engaged with the customer. We don't feel that ourselves, we cannot project it to anybody else. Success is an inside job, but we very often, and I've suffered with this earlier in my career, where I went through bouts of self-doubt, issues with my own kind of credibility and performance. And you take that into sales situations, you take that into customer meetings. We have to work on ourselves first. So psychology is so important. And there are lots of things you can do in this area. We work through a series of really solid, positive psychological principles, kind of lots of principles from positive psychology. So we talk about how to develop a growth mindset, we talk about how to self-coach, talk about how to focus on opportunity, not obstacles, possibility, not problems. And some of that conditioning needs to be almost undone before it can be reworked for many of us if we've had these challenges in the past. So psychology first. Once the psychology is in place, then we start to think about skill development. What are the key skills we need to develop in order to be successful in any field? But when it's sales, it's communication skills, questioning, it's listening, getting to the point, being able to join up the dots for the customer, figure out if they've said this, how do I replay that in a way that's meaningful and join it up to a solution? These are all skills that we develop over time. And very often what we find in organizations is that they've done a lot of work on the skills, but they've neglected the psychology. So even if you teach somebody over and over and over again, you think, why aren't they getting it? If they don't have the fundamental psychology in place, they don't believe they can succeed, they'll continually undermine themselves. I've seen that so many times as a sales and business leader, and it's been a blind spot for me in the past. So helping people to get that psychology in place is so important. Then we build the right skills. And then finally, third key building block for us is to systemize and put in place structure. So we talk through the customer journey and the sales process, understanding how do we systemize that? How do we make sure that the right stages are conducted at the right time for the customer so that we can scale and leverage our success? But psychology is this first fundamental layer. And we think about, how do we cultivate a positive mindset? There are 4 kind of key cornerstones to this: self-belief, confidence, motivation, and purpose. And, answering the key questions, I won't go through all of these, but how do we build self-belief? How do we help people to develop greater self-confidence? How do we then help them to drive and inspire their own motivation? And then finally, how do we make sure that they're connected to something bigger than themselves, drive, purpose, and a mission? And when we do that, it really does transform the way people think and feel about themselves and the work that they do, particularly in a sales role, because very often salespeople can feel as if it's not particularly rewarding or satisfying. And actually we can connect them with something bigger, something more meaningful, and it all starts to change. And what we do is we have a couple of models that we use in the business. I'll share these models with you because they're useful. The first is the prepare to framework. So how do we prepare for key customer meetings and to engage customers? It's a 4-blocker that's like a SWOT analysis, but it's specifically for sales. On the x-axis, we think about the customer or the client and ourselves and our business. And on the y-axis, we think about what's going on internally and what's going on externally. And that kind of leaves us with 4 key areas to flesh out and build out some content. The first is about information around the customer. What are the customer's strategic plans? What are they posting on social media? What are they sharing with their own either investors or community or network? Who are they involved with? Then externally, what's going on for the customer? What's the customer's external market look like? What are the challenges they face? What's on the landscape and the horizon for them? Then we start to think about ourselves, managing ourselves, making sure that we've got all the assets, that we feel confident, we're clear on the process, we're clear on the value proposition. And the final box is external validation. This is about the messages we can take to a customer that aren't us saying, we do this. These are validated by other customers who are getting results from us. And when we start to put a plan together that looks like this, you'll see that 3 of these boxes are really kind of oriented towards the customer and their external environment. And so all of a sudden we start to become more relevant. And the plan that we have is less about us and more about the market and the customer, and our value increases. So by increasing our value, increasing the proposition to customers, we become much better prepared for success. And then the second part of our model is this inspire model. So at the start of the model is preparation, which we've already covered. Then we re-establish the importance of relationships and rapport. So people will only buy from people they like. So we have to have a relationship established throughout every part of our sales cycle. And then we've been through this with the customer journey, but we lead with insight. So we're creating value early for the customer. We then ask about what they need and discover their needs at the highest level. Once we understand their needs, we talk about a solution and how that solution could be discussed to meet the customer's needs. And at the right stage, we then make a proposal that we're aiming to get agreement from the customer on. And you'll see at this stage that these arrows between these 3 stages are multi-directional. So if we get to a point where we make a proposal and the customer says, I'm not sure that's right, or I need to think about it, we recognize that we need to retrace our steps back through the process and say something like, I'm sorry about that, I've missed something, haven't I? What else do you need? What else is important to you? And go back to the needs discovery stage, then work back through the solution stage. So that's important to you. So if we can cover that as part of the work we do together, then would that meet the need you have? Customer will say yes, then we're ready for a proposal. So making sure we follow the process is really, really important to success. It's at that final stage, this is another gap for sales organizations, is we kind of get the customer to say, yeah, that sounds great, and then we leave. And actually what we should do is future pace, create some urgency, create the momentum as the final stage of our process, be clear on our actions, be clear on the customer's actions, and then we'll get their commitment to move forward, and we don't then suffer issues like ghosting. And then the final stage for us outside of the customer meeting is to reflect on the meeting, reflect on how well it's gone, reflect on anything we've learned, reflect on any changes we want to make, with a view to continually improving this cycle. And it works. This cycle works. It's incredibly effective. And you'll see that every letter of each of the stages spells out the word inspire. So INSPIRE. So we can commit it to memory. It becomes kind of embedded in our unconscious, and we can immediately know if we're at the right stage of the sales process with the customer. And what that enables us to do is get greater self-confidence. So when we're following a process, we work on the positive psychology, but when we teach people a process that they start to see working and that they can reproduce easily and effortlessly, it builds confidence. So our teams get confident, we become more confident as sales and business leaders, and everything starts to flow, and growth becomes a consequence of everything we do. Okay, so that's confidence, motivation, and it's the process. Let's talk about final stage, maintaining, final challenge, maintaining client momentum. So our final stage of our sales process is this immediate action. So immediate action is where we make sure that we are able to maintain the customer's engagement and enthusiasm. And I heard this quote a few years back: enthusiasm has a half-life. I love that saying. What it means is that in the moment, we're all enthusiastic, the customer's enthusiastic, they're like, yeah, sounds great, brilliant. Leave it with me, Justin. Leave it with me and I'll come back to you. And all of a sudden, if I don't then say, well, instead of leaving it with you, let's talk about next steps. Let me tell you what I'm prepared to commit to. Let me map out what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. If I don't do that, the customer's enthusiasm wanes. Enthusiasm doesn't last very long. I need to be held accountable for my enthusiasm. So in our final stage of the sales process, what we include are the actions that we will take to progress the order or the contract or the program. And so these are the things that need to happen next. And this is what I'm committed to doing. And this is when I'll do it. So the timing of the actions. And then we just talk to the client or the customer about the actions they need to take. So if I'm going to take these actions over this time period, what actions do you need to take? And when will you respond? When will you have a chance to review it and respond? And the customer tells you, well, probably, it's a weekend, probably won't get to it till Monday. No problem. So can I ask you to schedule some time to review it on Monday? Just get super laser clear on when they will commit so that enthusiasm doesn't wane. And the customer will commit to this if we ask. If we don't, they won't. So we just ask them, when can you do that? When will you commit to this stage? I'll commit to that stage. And we spend the last 10, 15 minutes of the meeting getting absolutely clear on what the next stages look like. And in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, they call it future pacing. So we start to visualize what happens. The customer actually starts to go through the visualization process. This is going to arrive from Justin. I'm going to spend some time filling it out or completing it and confirming it, reviewing it, sending it back to him. And as I go through those stages in my mind, I get more committed to it. And I start to see it as part of my future reality. If I'm not encouraged to go through that, I never join up those dots. It's really, really important final stage of our process. And so then we start talking about next steps beyond the meeting and date and a time for a follow-up discussion. So we've got all these stages going on. When should we actually talk again about this? And schedule it there and then. Because if we don't do that, we have the issue that many of you have found, and I've found in the past, I don't find it anymore, which is that you end up chasing customers that don't respond. So never get to a situation where you're chasing customers that don't respond. In that meeting, schedule the next meeting. That's the time to maintain momentum, not afterwards. So we do it when enthusiasm is high, when the customer's fully engaged. And the caveat is, we have to follow this sales process or the customer won't be engaged. If you get any resistance from the customer to this final stage, it's because you haven't created enough value in the conversation. So you have to rework your steps, follow our sales process, go through the stages, then you will be able to create this positive enthusiasm in the customer. And I'd like to think of this stage as kind of, if you think about yourself and the customer in the sales process, there's like two seats in the front of a car. There are two seats in the front of the car, but there's only one steering wheel. And what we need to do is make sure that at all times we have our hands on the wheel. Because if we don't have our hands on the wheel, i.e. the next stage of the process is documented, scheduled, diarised, and committed, If we don't do that, we've just handed the wheel over to the customer and we are now a passenger in the sales process. We cannot afford to be a passenger in the sales process. We must always be the driver of the sales process. And remember, it might sound like this is, a negative thing. It's a positive thing. We all want to be led. We all want our needs to be met. We all want the next breakthrough, but we very often either resist or put off progress. It's human nature. And actually, for us to be able to hold the customer accountable in this final stage is good for them, good for us, good for our business. It really does serve the customer at the highest level. And it's interesting because people that follow this final stage, people that get this bit right, are much, much more effective, because not only is the next stage of your sales process in place and you shorten the sales cycle, but you also find that you don't have to chase as many customers. So your time and your effectiveness improves. You don't have to spend so much time chasing customers, being ghosted, following up and following up. It's all done in the customer meeting. It's such an important stage. I mean, every stage is important, but this final stage is really, really important. And I'd like you to think about this. So this is an analogy that I heard a while back. It really resonated with me. If you've got a customer, if you've got a competitor, and you're in the market against a competitor, and the competitor is on a bike and you're running, right? The competitor's using a sales process that works and you and your team aren't. You are running, they are on a bike. It doesn't matter how fast you run, it doesn't matter how hard you train, you are never keeping up with the guy on the bike, or the guy or the girl on the bike. And it's a really great metaphor for our businesses, this. We have to get the most efficient processes in place. We have to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing, that our teams and ourselves, that we have the support we need, the right gear, the right approach, so that we can accelerate into the future. And if other businesses don't make those investments, then they're the ones that are trying to run while we're on a bike. And it's a really, really important principle, this, to get, that if we can put these measures in place, they will literally allow us to accelerate away from our competition. Okay, 25 past. So we've gone through quite a bit of content there. We've talked about 3 key challenges. We've talked about 3 key principles, or 3 ways in which we can address each of those challenges as part of our approach going forward. I'm going to invite you to go back into your breakout rooms now and just share some of the kind of insights that you've had from today. So insights is one thing, but I'd also like you to think about actions. So what are the actions that you should take in order to make some of these principles actually work for you? Because insight and knowledge in itself is one thing, but where it really makes a difference is when you take action on it. So it might be actions for you, might be actions for your team, but I'd love for you to, I'm just going to invite you into your breakout rooms and just have a discussion about your key actions and key insights. So let me open your rooms. I might do a bit of moving around just so that everybody has got at least 2 or 3 people in their room. So if I move you around, forgive me. See you in 10 minutes. That was a useful discussion. That was a useful discussion at the kind of tail end of our webinar. I'd love to hear either in the chat, or if anybody is brave enough to come on them, off mute and wants to share some insights with you, kind of key actions. What did you discuss in your groups? Fastest fingers first in the chat if you'd like to do that, or if somebody wants to come off mute and have a conversation, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, I don't mind saying it.
Yes, please, Justin. Yeah.
The chat that we had, and it was a point I was going to really pick up with you later, is that your theme has been very useful, but you're talking about you and the customer.
Yes.
We have a problem where we have 6 decision makers, chef, finance guy, the area manager, the property and the maintenance guy.
Yeah.
And the dealer.
They will pass the buck round.
Yeah.
So you can prepare as much as you like, but they will pass the buck. That's our biggest challenge.
Yeah. What we need to do in that instance is, so we have a principle called stakeholder management. And when we go through that principle of stakeholder management, what we need to figure out is, whilst you've got a role in the organization, you've also got a role in the buying process. So it's figuring out who has which role in the buying process and addressing that customer in the right way. So key roles would be things like decision maker, budget holder, influencer, and champion. And if you can start to map the different people in that organization and work out who's who in the zoo, as it were, and then start to manage them more appropriately. Now, the optimum is to get the key people in the same conversation at the same time, so that you avoid this kind of almost continual deflection from one person to another. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is important that we get it right. So that would be my advice, is to work out, okay, whilst that might be their role, where are they in the decision-making process or the customer process and the buying process, and then manage them accordingly. And Andrew also mentioned distributors and dealers. Absolutely. And what we need to make a decision on there is, when you're managing your end user, it's about the benefits to the end user and how we position the value to the end user. When we're dealing with a distributor or a partner, then it's about understanding what are their motivators and drivers, and how do we make sure that our approach engages and motivates them so that they are willing and enthusiastic about taking our product to market and being almost the face of our organization in front of the customer. So it is a different dynamic, but actually the process we use is similar. Does that make sense? Yeah, great. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Andrew. Excellent. What else came up? Okay, so I've got some comments in the chat. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Sarah, definitely agreeing next steps and arranging follow-up meeting during our first meeting. Great, thanks, Sarah. That is such a game changer. It's such an obvious step, but so easily overlooked. And very often it's because we feel a little bit of reticence to gain commitment, because we feel as if we're selling. But actually, if we reimagine that we're not selling, we are helping the customer to commit to what they've told us they need. And without our help, they won't commit. So actually, we're doing them an even greater service by helping them to commit. Reimagine what it means to you, and it really does help. Great. Thank you, Sarah. That's super. Nicola, mapping the customer journey and applying the principles shared and keeping our hands on the wheel at all times. Brilliant. Thanks, Nicola. That's great. Couldn't have put it myself. Couldn't have put it better myself, Nicola. Thank you very much. Excellent. Michael, keep to the long-term marketing plan, yeah, but be more creative in trying to cut through the clutter. Yeah, nice. Okay. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so you've got some long-term objectives that are right already, but actually short-term you might need some cut-through messaging. Yeah, great. Ivan, primary action is to formulate the questions which get me the key sales information without alienating the customer. Yeah, excellent. Absolutely, Ivan. The key to sell to our customers is in their minds. They know what it takes for us to sell to them, but they won't give it to us without us asking very deliberate and very intentional questions. And it's one of the kind of mantras I talk about in a lot of the work we do with clients. Your customer knows what it takes for you to sell to them. Your job is to ask them without saying, what do I need to do to sell to you? They might not, that is not that obvious, but to ask the right questions, cultivate the relationship, explore, get curious. When we do that, customers open up. When they open up, we're then able to join up the dots. But until they do, no chance. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Ivan. Excellent. Anthony, insight from sales statistics. Keep following up. Yeah, action, agree, customer actions, and next meeting to maintain enthusiasm and momentum. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you, Alice. That's great. And, remember some of the insights that I've shared with you today, some of those statistics, you will all have thought, okay, that's interesting. This makes sense. I can see how that's going to help. You need to also find your own versions of that for your customers, so that when your customers hear it, they think, oh God, that makes sense. yes, right, okay, that's why what I'm doing today isn't working. Right, Nicola's the person that can help me with this, or Michael's the person that can help with this. We become value creators through those insights that we share with customers. Then we follow the cycle, and they tell us what they need. We help them establish a solution to it, and all of a sudden things flow. Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you all for that. Thanks so much. We've had fantastic engagement today. Really, really brilliant. Love it. So let me go back to share my screen. So in our last, we will finish just before 4, and we've got a chance for Q&A. There's a couple of other things I'd love to share with you before we close our session. So first, just the business I founded is Focus for Growth. We work with some incredible clients, like market-leading clients, some of the fastest growing businesses, not only in the country, some of them in their marketplace, fastest growing companies in the world. And a real pleasure to do that. So we work with large organizations, medium-sized organizations, some really, really great companies that we work with. We run what we call our sales academies. And so we can either do these as bespoke programs for customers. If you've got your own team, we can do a team program, or we can run them as open programs. So if there's smaller organizations that want a support network and meet other sales or business professionals, we run them as academies, and they tend to work over, for the academies, they're open programs, they run over 12 months. And what happens is we have this brilliant sales diagnostic tool, which I'll invite you all to take today. It's completely free, called the Sales Acceleration Scorecard. And you follow the link, answer the questions, and then it gives you this personalized report. You get some professional development recommendations and this very personal report with your own scores. Really nice tool. I'll share the link with you today, and you can take that. It's free of charge to go through that process. We then once customers have gone through that scorecard, we then enroll them in an academy and an e-learning portal, and they've got access for 12 months. They get copies of the best-selling book that I mentioned earlier, where you've got all of the models, all of the principles in a kind of paperback hard copy, so that you can refer to it at any time. We have monthly sales mastermind web classes, all online, a bit like this, where we put you to breakout rooms, teach you key principles, workshop key challenges or priorities for you and your business. So we make sure it's completely tailored to everybody on the call. And we have a private WhatsApp group, just in case stuff comes up and you're like, I need a quick fix, or I need a bit of support, and I'm kind of open to that. And this continual evolution of our content. So work I do with clients is continually evolving. We're always bringing out refinements and improvements through that reflection stage that I go through myself. So it's the sales academies, you have these slides afterwards. So we really try and generate a high-performing sales community. We try and create this community feel, even though it's online. There are 12 monthly live web classes. We record everything, and there's an online program, so you can look at the content anytime online. It's all in bite-sized modules as well, through the e-learning portal. All of the principles and models are linked to the best-selling book. We make sure that everyone feels clear on actions after every session. Hopefully you're getting a sense for that in today's workshop too. And we talked about the scorecard development plan. And at the start, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned the toolkit, which is an Excel-based document. It's got every single asset that we use in the business in a single interactive Excel workbook. So it becomes your kind of guide to implementing a really solid sales approach. And if you're in a business management or business or sales leadership position, when your teams are using it, it's really easy to just say to your team member, just send me your toolkit. And then you can see the approach they're taking. You're able to help and coach them with it just through that toolkit conversation and what they're able to share with you. So that's the Sales Academy. And so what does that look like? So from us, it's 90 minutes every month, 12 live sessions, and the full annual kind of subscription is £3,540 plus VAT. The team at GrowthWorks have, for those of you who are working with GrowthWorks, you may already know this, but those of you that are working with GrowthWorks, they've got this scheme where they do 50% match funding. So if you register with them and subject to your eligibility, then they will basically match funds. So you get half price on any sales training or any sales academies with Focus for Growth. So it's a really good opportunity. Please do speak to your GrowthWorks contact if you'd like to explore that further, and they'll guide you on the process and next steps. In terms of our masterminds, just what we try and create is this kind of confidential environment where people can share real life customer challenges. We try and create this community. There's real collaboration amongst the group. Obviously a bit of camaraderie. We like to encourage a bit of that, all healthy and appropriate, of course. And a bit of challenge as well. It's just sometimes if people aren't quite getting the results they want, just a bit of challenge in the right direction so that they get a change in perspective and can get the breakthrough that they really need for their through to you. There's a link here to the scorecard. So this is free. So please feel free to check out the scorecard. It's salesacceleration.scoreapp.com, 46 assessment statements. You get this full kind of 12, 13 page professional development report, and you'll get scores that link to your performance based on your answers to the questions in the scorecard. The feedback from customers is very often that just going through the process of the scorecard helps them to kind of get clarity on, actually, where do I need to focus now? What are the areas? Even some of the statements and questions, you'll think, actually, I'm not even doing that today. So it just starts to give you a bit more insight and awareness around your own sales approach or your team's sales approach. We've had, that number's out of date, actually, we're up at about 2,500 people through the scorecard now. So we've had a lot of people go through this. And so you'll see, there's also, when we run bespoke programs, an opportunity to do some benchmarking as well, to kind of help you see where you stand against other people that have been through the scorecard. Final couple of things. So our mission, just wanted to talk a bit about the mission at Focus for Growth. So we really are constantly exploring best practice, and we're looking to bring world-class sales and business best practice to our clients. The intention is to help you become market leaders in your field, and then inspire and encourage you to think about how do you make a positive impact beyond your business and potentially in the world. And we do that through, we have 5 values in our business. We're a small business team, but we're really committed to the organization. So our values, we've got these 5 values that spell out the word focus. The first is about just thinking about how we become a force for good, not just for our customers, but in our communities. I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. The O is for ownership, just making sure that we step into this principle. I encourage everyone in my business to think about this principle of owning the business. If you owned the business, what decision would you make now? If you owned our clients' businesses, what else are we prepared to do to help and support them? So this principle of ownership is really important. The C is about client-centered, about really thinking about customers. How do we shape our proposition? How do we make sure we continually evolve the value for customers? It's so important. The U is unlimited potential. We all have more potential than we realize, and helping us unlock that and really start to believe it and then build a plan around it is like magic. So it's kind of unlimited potential is really important for us to start to ruminate on and continually kind of think about and then act upon. And the final, the S, is about really underpins a growth mindset. Everything we do is either success or a lesson. So if it doesn't work, it's not failure, it's a lesson. So we succeed or learn. And we really encourage this through our teams and through the work that we do. And we are proud advocates of the UN Global Goals. I don't know if any of you have heard of the UN Global Goals, but they're basically 17 goals that help improve life on planet Earth. And what the UN advocate is for businesses to pick one that's particularly meaningful for them, and then start to kind of be a champion for that and start to pledge and do work around it. So ours is around decent work and economic growth, goal 8. And we're proud members of the Pledge 1%. And the way that we do that is me on a personal level. So about 18 months ago, I set up a group in Cambridgeshire called Walk and Talk for Men. It's a group that supports men's mental health. I set it up to try and help men in my local community to kind of navigate some of the stresses and challenges they were facing, not just because of COVID, but because of some of the challenges I've seen in people that are close to me and personally at times. Running a business isn't easy. You guys all know this. It can be challenging. So what we do is we meet twice a month at Nature Reserve in St Neots, a place called Little Paxton, and it's like a bird sanctuary. So we walk for 90 minutes, a couple of times a month, and the group has become just a bit of a local phenomenon. We started, the first walk I did, I had 8 people join us, And now we are regularly, as you'll see at this top picture, we're regularly up at kind of 30 to 35 gentlemen who join us and walk and talk and just try and, you know, provide support for each other. And it's a walking group for men because men's mental health is, you know, one of the key priorities. 3 times as many men commit suicide every year as women. So it's a particular issue for men. And what we know, the evidence is really clear that actually men don't have that many kind of community-based relationships, whereas women are really good at that. So this becomes, you know, a vehicle for us to make a difference in our local community, and particularly with men in our local community, which is a cause that's particularly meaningful to me and I'm passionate about. So I kind of, as a final kind of thought before we go to Q&A, just to ask you to invite you to think beyond your business today, beyond, you know, the obvious, and think about, you know, making a positive impact either in your local communities, or, you know, if you want to think bigger than that, how do you make a positive impact in the world? I'd love to kind of invite you and inspire you to think about that beyond today's session. If you'd like to connect with me, you can scan this Linktree post. My email is on here, justinlee@focusforgrowth.co.uk. I put in the chat earlier a link to my Linktree account as well. You can get access to all the resource on there, including the sales scorecard. So if you click on the Linktree link, you'll get it there. You can check out the website at justin-lee.com as well. If you'd like, please do feel free to contact the GrowthWorks team. If you want to contact us directly, my marketing executive, Sarah Davey @focusforgrowth.co.uk. If you'd like access to the slides, we will send them through GrowthWorks. If you want them directly from us, feel free to drop Sarah an email and she'll do that. If anybody would like a copy of the sales toolkit, I'm feeling particularly generous today, I'll also happily send you a copy of the toolkit as well. Okay, yes, thank you, Sarah. If you could email Sarah Davey and she will respond and get you those assets. Okay, we have 8 minutes left. Look at that, what timing. I'd love to hear any questions or any comments, anything that you'd like to share with me. Some comments coming in, thank you very much. Matthew, thanks for the time. Nicola, thank you. Leander, okay, great, thanks. Leander's got a challenge. A frequent challenge would be how to keep the sales team focused on those breakthroughs, breaking through all the way to closing and spending time in order of priority versus being less effective and defaulting to the path of least resistance. You've just highlighted perfectly there, Leander, the common challenge that a lot of sales organizations face. So my advice is about going back to the fundamentals. So if you think about it, some of the reasons that your team may not be focusing on the priorities because that feels too hard. And it might feel too hard because the approach they're taking isn't the right or the optimal approach. So if we take a step back and go, right, actually, let's help them get really good at selling. Let's help them build that self-belief, recognize that actually if they do the right steps in the right order, they're going to create greater success and win more often, then they'll lean into doing the things that are a priority. That takes a bit of time. So it won't be a one conversation fix. It will be a series of conversations, perhaps a series of sharing insights and coaching. Because remember, we talked about, you know, sales managers and sales leaders and business leaders, in order to get that commitment from the teams, we have to coach it from them. So if we just say to people, you need to prioritize on the stuff that's, you know, bigger impact, they might say yes in the moment and then go away and carry on doing what they're doing. I've found that many a time. Our job then is to coach them. So what might that look like? What are the priority tasks? How are you going to keep these on your radar? How are you going to avoid slipping back into habits and doing the less effective work in the role? And getting them to tell us, because very much like, you know, everything we need to sell to the customers in the customer's mind, we have to ask them so that we can unlock how to do it. It's the same with our teams. Everything we need, everything the teams need for us to be able to hold them accountable to changes in their mind, they know that they just won't voluntarily give it to us until we have the right conversation, build trust, ask the right questions, hold them accountable. Does that make sense, Leanna?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the reason it's a challenge is because there is a need to often move to where there is a path of less resistance. So often it's more important to suddenly spend time on someone that is going to say buy 6 of our products this month versus someone that's going to buy 100 of our products, but it might take a year and a half. And there's a limited window of opportunity to seize the former one. And that is more important today or maybe this week to focus on that. So where you get the sort of 4 quadrants of important, non-important, critical, non-critical, do you find that there are key reminder points or 3 key things that salespeople should think of every day as to how they choose to plan their time?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a principle. There's a principle called 666. Don't be put off by the the symbolism. But 666 is 6 outbound calls, 6 outbound emails, 6 outbound messages every day, and you just make sure that you are working through the right level of your customers and priorities in a pipeline. Just making sure that your team are clear on the pipeline and that they're clear on how often they're following up with different people. And this is why it's so important to get this final stage of the process right, the immediate action, because really when we've got those larger opportunities, it's even more important if the customer says, well, it's going to take 12 months to close, no problem. Okay, what's the next step? When are we going to complete that next step? When should we check in next? So that is continually is part of their cycle. So that when you have the conversation, the 100-piece order or the 100 unit opportunity, where are we with that? The team should say, no worries, next stage of the sales process, we're booked in 2 weeks to have a review and figure out where we go next and make sure that they're on progress, that the contract's in place or whatever it is. But the challenge is when we have that large opportunity, we don't have the follow-up in place. So it's organization, but it's also following the sales process again. Yeah, great questions. Thanks, Leander. Good. I hope that helped. Okay, good. I don't think we've got any other questions, which is great. Let me just double check. No, nothing there. Thank you for the comments. Ivan's got a call starting, so they're gonna leave with 6 new questions. Ivan's got another call coming. He's got 6 new questions to ask. Brilliant. Thank you, Ivan. I'm glad it's been practical for you as well. Okay, next workshop I have. I'm working with GrowthWorks on the 20th of July. We have an in-person workshop, which is about sales coaching, sales leadership coaching. So unlock your growth potential through being a better leader. This is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Wednesday, the 20th of July. We're going to be at the Holiday Inn Huntingdon Racecourse Hotel. It's free, but it is exclusive for GrowthWorks clients. So please do get in touch with GrowthWorks to register for this. And if you'd like to know more, abigail.morton@growthworks.uk will be able to help you out. So that'll be this is about, I talked about the second element of the work that I do. First element is consultative selling, which we covered today. Second element is coaching as a leadership style. How do we get really effective as a coaching sales leader? So that's what we'll be covering on the next workshop on Wednesday, the 20th of July. And GrowthWorks have plenty of other events coming up, so do check out their website, growthworkscoaching.uk/events, all of these different events that GrowthWorks are partnering with different providers to supply and put on for their customers. So we are at the end of our presentation today, so thank you very much. Okay, Hannah, thanks for the comment. Let me just stop sharing my screen. So guys, that ends our session today. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please feel free to make contact, connect with me and with the GrowthWorks team. And if you are in a leadership position, we look forward to seeing you on the 20th of July at the leadership workshop as well. Okay, so thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your week and have a great weekend when you get there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks. See you later.